Alright, we are recording. Chapter 15? Yes, because that's the 16. Chapter 15 of Attack of the Clones. I don't think I've got much. I don't know how much ranting it also may trigger for me. One thing a little problematic for me, though, I don't remember this part of the movie that well. So I can't quite speak to what is and is, what it's, unique to the book, what's unique to the movie. Yeah. But we've got Obi-Wan arriving at Kamino and like the first bit of him finding information there. And then Anakin and Padme arriving at the resort, which I'm gonna get to. That doesn't make sense. In the Lake Country, which actually it starts with them being brought there by this old guy, Patty, I think was the name, who I appreciate some of what was written there concerning him, but I also think it wasn't that well done in the sense of it felt a little out of place, some of it. Like, I feel it would be nicer if it were given more of its own thing. Okay. Yeah. So, Patty is an older man, very experienced with his speeder, that's essentially a boat, though it is going above the water initially. And because of how its repulsors, or whatever it's that it uses, down thrusters. I was looking for it below it down. That's why it took me so long. It's in the first sentence. But those are like barely touching the water. Are so gentle the water's barely disturbed. But every now and then a wave comes up and catches, so there's spray coming up, and seeing Padme react nicely to that, and Anakin. And he has known Padme apparently for a long time, decides, all right, I'll just, bring it down, put it in the water. Which, the way it's described, I'm a little unclear if it's like they're just on the surface and they just bounce against it like a rock skipping. But it causes a lot of spray to come up. And one thing that Anakin ends up reflecting on is how this is something normally lost. Like, if you were piloting the speeder normally, you would be just above the water, none of this interaction, none of this turbulence. Yeah, it was true. He knew the technology had tamed the galaxy, and while that seemed a good thing in terms of efficiency and comfort, he had to believe that something, too, had been lost. The excitement of living on the edge of disaster. I actually don't like how it's put like that. Or the simple tactile feeling of a ride like this, bouncing across the waves, feeling the wind and the cold spray. I like that a little bit better. But the idea of on the edge of disaster, because Patty is a master of this thing, so he is able to like bring it really close to the edge of flipping over. But it won't. He's a master of it. I just find it odd because it's like Anakin is an expert pilot. Like, even as a child, he was an expert pilot. You'd think he would still have this sense here. Don't get me wrong. I like the sentiment and do feel that that's worth exploring, but it just seems odd to have it in here and for Anakin specifically, because also when he was a slave on Tatooine, it's like part of his life, almost half of it at this point, because he's only 20, he was living in the situation where he didn't have access to this kind of technology. So it is just feels out of place for him. I like the sentiment though. I do like the sentiment. I truly do. It's just, yeah. Okay, so getting to the actual notes, we get the first kiss between the two, which it makes sense. She does pull away from it, and it's actually right here. No, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry, when I'm around you, my mind is no longer my own. I don't remember how much these lines from them match up exactly with the movie. I know some of them do. I don't know about all of them. But getting inside their heads is nice. Because you really get a better sense of how romantic this whole experience is, especially for her. Like, even in the movie, it's clear Anakin's enjoying it and all that. But she at least, how much of it is a front, how much of it is genuine for her, but this is like, no, she's, for a lot of this, she's clearly succumbing to that. She is falling in love. But at the same time, I brought this point up in a different chapter. I wonder how much of it could also be not just that's Anakin, but just man of appropriate age with her, who is so dedicated to her, who does care about her, and she is escaping being the politician. That, in theory, I could almost see if it were another man, a different character from Anakin, but had such an interest in her, maybe not as intense as Anakin's, but just because, being there when she doesn't have to be the politician, if he also would have then been the focus of these emotions for her. I can understand somebody saying, well, that would damage the love story that they have, but at the same time, it is kind of how it reads. I mean, yes, she does look at him and does see things in him. Sees. I know some people might not like the use of the word here, but does see the beauty of him as well. And just the idea of falling in love with him is also attractive to her, but it is still. I'm trying to think of how best to put it. I'm not yet getting the sense here of she is in love specifically with him. She's in love, but I don't necessarily feel like it's I love him. There's no one else, just him. Or if I do, I don't know how much of it, like in moments where it does seem like that, I'm not sure, okay, is that because she actually loves him, or she is reacting to, reflecting even, his love for her? And in some ways, that's actually a good question, because it can make some of the situation between them, where she is still saying, no, we can't do this, make that a bit more reasonable, because she's not completely in love with him. I should emphasize that. But also then, because we know they do ultimately get married in the end of the story, we may have that switch then where suddenly it is him. But it's also true, because I'm just trying to play out the movie in my mind. She learns about, she's on Tatooine, and he does tell her about the slaughtering of the Tuscans. Almost said tungsten. That's not it. That's an element. The Tuscans. Which is going to be very interesting, his confession to her. Because there is, I think, generally speaking, I do believe this in reality, a masculine desire for having a woman that will forgive you for your various weaknesses, your various mistakes. Not, mass slaughter. That's a bit much. But it still is interesting. It will be interesting to see how she handles that, especially because we're going to be able to be in her mind here. How she, does she actually forgive him? Is she able to forgive him? Is she questioning that? It's like that could be very, very interesting to see. But then, of course, they end up going to Geonosis, which there's, remembering from the movie, some of that could just be she feels a duty to Obi-Wan and in general to the Republic as well. So going, and, Anakin goes, and, he does do everything he can to protect her. So it will be interesting to get to be inside of her head for some of this. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna skip that for a little bit. I have some notes here concerning Obi-Wan on Kamino, but I want to stay with Padme and Anakin for the moment. So, one, and I think I've just coincidentally landed on it when I was just mindlessly flipping the pages, that it doesn't make much sense. So it's actually one page off. Where is it? Okay, so that's one part. Okay. When she turned back, Anakin was already standing by the table looking over the bowl of fruit and the settings Padme had put out. Okay, so they are at this lake country location. I already referred to it as a resort. That's the point that I have, that this doesn't make much sense. And except for Patty, who was just the boat pilot, no one else has been mentioned in the settings Padme had put out. Okay, so this sounds a lot like, to me, up until this point, they are alone there. I think in the movie it is depicted that way. They are alone. She knows this place. So it would make sense. She's the one that would put out the settings because she knows where they are. She potentially might be a better cook than he is. If she's anything like her mother, she would have to be. So that would all make sense, right? Soon enough, though, the pair had settled in at the table, seated across from each other. Two of the resort waitresses, Nandi and Tekla, served them their meal. So suddenly we're at a resort. Presumably the whole time we've been at a resort. I mean, yes, they technically left and went and played in this field, hilly field, and all that, then came back and all that. But they're at a resort with at least two of the waitresses, so there is more than those two. Why did Padme put down the settings? Isn't that their job? I was like, what? I don't understand it, except for it allows her not to be the one, or him, not to be the one to put the settings away, to clean up, but also then for them to bring over the desserts, so they're not getting it by having to do that themselves. But it's like, it doesn't make sense. Plus, there's the whole, I get she's on Naboo. She feels safe. Anakin has made a point previously, and she kind of shot him down. The whole, I'm here to protect you. I need to be making the decisions, of where we are. But Padme was like, but you don't know Naboo. I do. And it's also why are you talking while I'm talking kind of thing. I mean, she was not happy with him for speaking, but there was a fair point. He was being a bit aggressive with how he was saying that, though, when he challenges Obi-Wan. He could have said something better, just, or even I need to know where we're going. You need to consult me on this. Not saying that I need to be the one making the decision, but it's I do need to know this. You can't just make these decisions without me. But now it's this Patty that, okay, I guess Padme knows him, so it's Anakin be like, all right, that's okay. But then it's, who are these two? Who else is at the resort? Are they the only people here? I mean, it's this is not safe, potentially. So, okay. I think I'd already said, a lot of it was, pretty romantic for them, and good, reasonable conversations between them concerning that, just what you'd expect. And one thing also, because I want to, part of my image for the movie, for these scenes in the movie, to be fair, are colored by the fact that I was in middle school at the time this movie came out. So imagine middle school stupid kids, mocking things that might be good, but it's let's still mock them because we're stupid kids. I mean, so come on, we do that. We all do that at one point or another. But I do remember it being kind of melodramatic, I guess would be a way to put it, and a little bit over the top. And some that, it'll be interesting to watch through it again, because I want to say part of my memory, and this might just be how I was told to interpret things, not necessarily how it was, but Hayden Christensen being somewhat overacting in it, which, also to be fair, that's not necessarily always on an actor. That can also be a director not being able to manage an actor well, or not being able to communicate to an actor how to give them what they want. But I don't want to suggest any issue with Hayden Christensen or any of the actors. I really don't. I just that's part of what I remember here. But reading it, some of it might be a little bit over the line that they need to be. A little bit touching on melodramatic, but it actually doesn't feel that bad. And I think some of that might be maybe the lines are just as melodramatic here as in the movie, but here we're in their heads as well. So we're getting that benefit, which spaces them out, and it's also you're getting the fuller context to them being said. So the way that, like, Anakin doing something silly, like, I don't remember this being in the movie. In the movie he does pick up the pear, or it looks like a pear, and is doing that, using the Force with it. In this, it's explained that's actually her favorite dessert, so she's really looking forward to having it. And then when she goes at it with a fork, it moves, and she's like, "Okay, try that again," and moved again. It's like, stop that! What? Because he's using the Force to move on. He's just being playful there. And then finally, she tries again because he's lying, but it's like tries again, moves, and then he picks up and she's like, that. And it's just it works nicely in here. It is longer than what's in the movie because I don't think we see it moving around in a bowl in the movie. But it's still, it's like you're getting him. It's talking about him grinning because sometimes it's like, oh, and Anakin is grinning like almost ear to ear at this. Might not always notice that in a movie, and it's also the specifically saying ear to ear. Like it's an especially significant smile and such. It's like sometimes the books, because the details are always there and unmissable. Okay, not always unmissable. Sometimes they're subtle, but sometimes they're not. Then they are unmissable. Then they are very obvious. Whereas in a movie, it's like they can be a lot of things. Maybe the angle isn't great, so not everyone notices it. You have to study to find it. So I guess that's a very, very long-winded way of saying there are advantages to books. There are advantages to movies as well, don't get me wrong. Depends on the story you're trying to tell with the medium. But it is just the whole, I don't know how much, maybe the lines are equally melodramatic, but it is just because you have all the other context, all the in your head stuff that is book only, that makes a difference. Yeah, so I mean, it's like, here. This definitely seems melodramatic. Let me just go through the line. The spoken line, skipping all the rest. From the moment I met you all those years ago, a day hasn't gone by when I haven't thought of you. And now that I'm with you again, I'm in agony. The closer I get to you, the worse it gets. Thought of not being with you makes my stomach turn over, my mouth go dry, I feel dizzy, I can't breathe. I'm haunted by the kiss you never should have given me. My heart is beating, hoping that kiss will not become a scar. You are in my very soul, tormenting me. Actually, that's where it ends. Yeah, I know I'm not acting it out. My apologies. But if we include the things said around it, which actually, there is one bit that okay, that could have been broken up, but from the moment I met you all those years ago, a day hasn't gone by when I haven't thought of you. His voice was husky, intense, and the sparkle in his eyes bored right through her. Which, I want to add one thing to that. Because of what was actually said in the previous paragraph, his eyes bored right through her. When reading that, because it's near the end, so I remembered very, very well, I didn't just interpret that as, like, his gaze is going through, but she herself is also so receptive to it because of how she is feeling. So it's not even like he might not be intentionally giving her such a look, but for her, it feels that way. It is cutting into her like that. Okay. And now that I'm with you again, I'm in agony. The closer I get to you, the worse it gets. The thought of not being with you makes my stomach turn over, my mouth go dry, I feel dizzy, I can't breathe. I'm haunted by the kiss you should never have given me. My heart is beating, hoping that kiss will not become a scar. That could have been broken up. I will acknowledge that. Just something where, again, we're getting into his head, some sort of description. Because that is kind of melodramatic. That is a bit over the top. But it is what it is. Is what it is. But it's also, then we get an entire paragraph that's actually her reaction. So not anything spoken. Padme's hand slowly dropped to her side, and she sat listening in amazement at how honestly he was opening up before her, baring his heart though he knew she might tear it asunder with a single word. She was honored by the thought and truly touched and afraid. Even a very good actress. This is no commentary on Natalie Portman, to be clear. I'm just saying, even a very good actress, that is not going to be necessarily something easily conveyed just in a look. And I think I turned on the AI tracking. Yeah, I did, so whatever. I'll leave it for now. You were in my soul, tormenting me, Anakin went on, not a bit of falseness in his tone. This was no ploy to garner any physical favors. This was honest and straightforward, refreshingly so to the woman who had spent most of her life being attended by handmaidens, whose job it was to please, and entertaining dignitaries whose agendas were never quite what they seemed. What can I do? He asked softly. I will do anything you ask. I missed that earlier, but it's like just spoken. And again, even okay, no, very good actors would be able to do that very well. Speaking it. It's the advantage of you actually speaking, so you can carry your emotions that way. Versus what I just said about actresses, that some of that isn't going to be the easiest to convey because you would have to do that without any speech. And some of this is kind of specific that just your face might not be enough. But it's like, as much as that does seem almost tempting being melodramatic, with the other descriptions in there, it's not. It really isn't. It gives such context that it is very effective. Going on a little bit, if you are suffering as much as I am, tell me. And now she's actually answering, and goes for actually a bit, with basically, I just want to see where it is. Where is it? Oh, okay, there it is. But basically, her trying to tell him no, but, well, if you're suffering as much as I am, tell me. And she's basically avoiding it for a bit, and then finally says something that, regardless of the way we feel about each other, then you do feel something. Okay, he didn't cut her off. She did finish the sentence. I just said it that way. But then it's like, trying to give reasons that it's not, that this is impossible. Like, the Jedi aren't allowed to marry. Technically, they're not allowed to have relationships like this either. But let's, that is, you'd be expelled from the order. I will not let you give up your future for me. Which is actually a really dumb line. It makes perfect sense. Don't get me wrong there, but it's like an easy response is, but I want you to be my future, and then it's like, well, completely diffused. I mean, it's like you can't. What response can she have for that one? I will not let you give up your future for me. You're asking me to be rational, Anakin replied, without the slightest hesitation. This is something I know I cannot do. Believe me, I wish I could wish my feelings away, but I can't. I mean, it is nice, and being in there, like the whole, you asked me to be rational, Anakin replied without the slightest hesitation, and his confidence and boldness here caught Padme a bit by surprise. There was no longer anything of the child in the man before her. She felt her control slip a notch. Yeah, I mean, so how could you convey that well in a movie? Whereas here, it is written out, so it's very clear what's going on here, and how there was no longer anything of the child in the man before her. That could be interpreted two ways. One is that he is in fact becoming more mature right there, right in front of her. Is becoming more a man and less a child. But it could also be she, like the view of her view of Annie, the child there, is gone. Has disappeared. That it isn't just he has a crush on her still. It isn't just something like that. But this is something serious. This is something sincere. This is something significant. That's not easy to convey in a movie when you can't just say it. And she has a response. Well, yeah, I'm not going to give in to this. I have more important things to do than fall in love. Yeah, he was not happy with that one. It wouldn't have to be that way. We could keep it a secret. So him just being like, there's still some way that's possible. Then we'd be living a lie. One we couldn't keep up even if we wanted to. My sister saw it, so did my mother. I couldn't do that. Could you, Anakin? Could you live like that? No, you're right. It would destroy us. I don't remember if this line is in the movie. I'm very curious if it is. Especially because, they do ultimately get married and do ultimately try to keep the secret. But it's also, like, kind of a point I've made before. If he didn't have to keep the secret, at least with Obi-Wan. Maybe the rest of the Jedi Order wouldn't know, but at least Obi-Wan. It really would have helped. But it also makes sense why, because how rigid Obi-Wan has already been shown, he couldn't tell Obi-Wan. Because if he tried to, Obi-Wan would probably feel compelled or very, very torn. Does he start trying to expel Anakin from the Order, or does he keep the secret and technically lie to everyone? That would be very, very hard, very painful for Obi-Wan. Alright, yeah. No, you're right, it would destroy us, he finally admitted. By the way, they're standing by a fire. Padme looked from Anakin to the fire. Which would destroy her, destroy them, she had to wonder. The action or the thought? That is what the chapter ends on, and I really like it. I do, because it is, even though, yes, I know how this is ultimately going to go, but it is still such, unfortunately, it's one of those things that I'm not feeling as much of the energy that last thing, the action or the thought, that actually should have a lot more power to it than what I'm actually feeling. But I fully recognize it's a very good line there, because what it's pointing out is that the whole, okay, fine, they're not going to act on their love for each other, which that may save them from certain consequences. But could it be the fact that they do just love each other? Could that still lead them to a doom, a negative doom? Technically, they are also doomed to be married. I mean, doom is kind of funny that way. You can use the word in that way. But in any case, like, you can't be doomed to happy things, is my point. But anyhow, it still is a very good line there, and it is like, can they escape this potentially negative future? Obviously, we do know what ends up happening, but it is still quite a powerful and interesting one. I would just, especially because in both of the last videos, I think, I talked about the whole, I want him to just decide to leave the Jedi Order. I want him to make that decision, and he still could. There's still time. With it just being, not as I said then, not necessarily leaving so that he can be with her. Although with this ending, if he made that decision, chances are it would be a no, with you. And she might not be able to do much to escape that. I mean, I could see it being she would have to stay until the Military Creation Act is dealt with, and then say, okay, I'm out, husband, let's go. Or him arguing that once that is done, can you leave? And it's like, really pressing her and potentially succeeding in doing so. But of course, we know the war happens and all that. But it's like, I want him to do that, not just because that way he can have this love that otherwise is forbidden, but so that he can be in the better family relationship, the better situation that he's witnessed with her family. To find that for himself. I really, really want him to do that so that it is him man, I'm making these such long videos. So that it is him stating so strongly, this is something I know I want. and no, I need even. But I don't know if we're gonna get that. I really hope we do. And it could actually come up when they arrive at Tatooine and he meets his family, his new family there, and also after he slaughters the Tuscans. Could come up then as well. Although at that moment he'd probably be feeling more like, leave the Jedi Order, he's not worthy there, but also he can't like try to find that happiness for himself. He may feel that he needs to be punished, which is actually where then her potentially trying to forgive him, or at least giving him a reason to believe forgiveness is possible, that, could at least get him to continue on and potentially try to find that better situation in the future. So we'll see. But it is just, as I said, I want him to want that and make it clear he wants that, because it makes it more the tragedy that he can't, that he is denied it because of the war, and he feels a duty there, just as she does. But then also that glimmer of hope that because they do get married, that it's like there's something that he can escape to. That there's something outside of that he can make it to. All right, the last note I have, Master Sifo Dyas is the one who apparently ordered the clone army, at least according to the Kaminoans, the people of Kamino. We get almost no information on him, unfortunately. Obi-Wan is just thinking about how he had an untimely death 10 years ago, which would be about the time that the order was placed. And he wonders how he could have made the order without the rest of the Jedi Council knowing. Which is a fair question. If he was on the council at that time, I do not know. It's also... I don't recall the name being used before, but we've been with the council previously, and wow, I think I actually got pretty close to it. Okay. I am amazed I actually managed to get it. So yeah, we got Mace Windu. Okay. So we got Mace Windu and Yoda mentioned. Seniors in rank among those seated. Stately Kiadamundi, young and beautiful Adigala, slender Depa Bilapa, crested and marble-faced even Peel, and all the others. So I guess in theory he's all the others, but one issue, and maybe it was, kind of talking it up, but when Caminos spoke of it, he is still a leading member of the Jedi Council. So, to be fair, he may not have planned that out well enough to be able to have the name in the previous book. But it is, I do want this answered of why this person would make the call for that. And also don't forget, this is around the time that Count Dooku left as well, 9-10 years ago. So I do want this conspiracy answered. Hopefully it is. And it could be something like Dooku impersonated him, and wait, no, because Dooku can't know. Somehow Sifo knew to do this and was then killed. Because it's also, or maybe it was Palpatine himself that took advantage of Sifo having recently died, or is going to die soon because it's Palpatine, to get this going, and then is manipulating the Separatists to basically gin up that there should be this military creation act and have the clone army ready. That is all possible, but still is. I don't know what Dooku is yet. Is he Palpatine's apprentice? Because how he's been described, he should actually be very much against Palpatine, him being against the Republic and the Jedi Order is reasonable, but he would absolutely be, how they've described him, he would be against Palpatine. So is he a third party here that is actually trying to legitimately save the Republic in the way he best can, but he doesn't know enough to expose Palpatine, he can't challenge Palpatine, and is in fact being manipulated by Palpatine / Darth Sidious, since it's the same person, and doesn't know it. I don't know, and I'd really like to find out. Hopefully we will. But it would just also then become one of those things of, you think, throughout the course of the Clone War, between this and Revenge of the Sith, potentially, it'd have to be, because he dies at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. But if him coming to realize what's actually going on, and that if he is being manipulated, but he is truly trying to be a third party here, but if him being manipulated and trying to solve that, maybe that's why he actually went to try to abduct Palpatine at the start of Revenge of the Sith. That it was to expose him, but then how it's presented in the beginning of the movie, at least, doesn't make any sense. Because you'd think either he would just kill Palpatine, understanding that Palpatine's death would secure peace for the Republic, for the galaxy. As do that and then accept his own execution and even just say nothing. Never expose him. Or maybe set up so it can be found out later. That would make sense, actually. But instead, it does seem like Dooku was actually serving Palpatine, but again, as I said, how the character's already been described, he should be rejecting Palpatine. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to find out. But there's another thing that I have a note for here. Kamino is past the outer rim of the Republic, so it is akin to Tatooine in that respect. What did Dexter say about the Kamino? Hang on just a second. I think the tracking turned off. There we go. And let it send it back on me. What did Dexter say about the Kamino? They'll like you if you are respectful and have money. How'd this dude pay for it? They ordered an army, a clone army from the Kamino. How are they paying? How'd the dude pay for it? If he paid for it up front, okay, where'd the money come from that he could get that without the Jedi Council knowing? And also, do they take Republic credits, or did they have to pay by some other means? If not, if it has to be paid later, then they should be asking Obi-Wan, where's the balance? Or who do we send the bill to in the Republic? I mean, it is a problem. It is established that there's money in the galaxy, and it is established that the Kamino do things for money. It's a kind of a big plot hole. At least if it is supposed to be Sifu, Sifos, him, who placed the order. Because it doesn't make... How would the Jedi have money? They're a borderline monastic order. Say borderline because they seem too varied to be purely monastic. But in any case, they would have wealth, but it would be more communal, you would think. It's not like Obi-Wan and Anakin are drawing salaries. Yeah. So, and that's also something that I do wonder about when we get to it, is Count Dooku's first name? I mean, they're abducted from their families before they turn 1 year old. Which you'd think would then mean, a count can be by bloodline. Like that's nobility, right? No. Wait. Royalty. Sorry. Well, yeah. Anyway, passed down by bloodline. But you'd think that the Jedi, by virtue of taking the kid and raising it separated from your family, and you're really not allowed to go back to your family, that means that it's severed, so you're not a count anymore. You don't have that rank, you don't have that title. So where'd he get it from, or is he just calling himself that? I actually am curious. That I could believe won't be answered as just a Count Dooku is a nice imposing name. What's he a count of? You're not supposed to ask that question. Go away now. Yeah. I can be technical and I can be pedantic. Yay me. I mean, for what it's worth, sometimes you do need that for writing a story. And I don't just write, I also edit, so it actually gives me a lot of opportunity to practice being pedantic. Still, I recommend some of my books. I don't think that they get that. Yeah. Anyway, okay. I'm trying to remember what it was. I did see just a little bit. Okay. Yeah, well, so back on Camino, and the first 3 words are "Wow, Boba Fett," because apparently they like saw the Jedi Starfighter, so he's intrigued by that. So yeah, we'll have more stuff with Camino in this. I don't know what else, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things ultimately develop here. And what plot holes might be filled or what plot holes remain, and what other stuff we get. All right, where's the cursor? There it is. See you next time.